Just a little bit. It's just about down to a knife edge on the bottom edge now, at least across the middle. Okay. Need to widen the ends out just a little bit here. It's actually resting on the shoulders of the groove there, so okay. Now at this point we can switch back to our ball burr and cut the profile a little closer. So I think we're there. That's pretty much where I wanted it. Okay, so we've got the bezel basket fitted to the shank. Set our shank aside for a moment. I'm going to put the ball burr away. If you've got a quick change handpiece, they use a collet, and it's always a good idea to put something in the collet to keep the collet from collapsing while it's not being used. So I always just keep a cut off shank in there. Now, which side did I flatten? Maybe this side. This is the top. Let's fit our bezel. Make sure that's all a good fit. And it's laying down nice and flat all the way across the bottom. And it's like I've got a nice, I'm looking at the line that I'd scribed in earlier and just checking it for the height above the ring here. That looks good. So let's prepare that for soldering. And do that, and get any residue of olive oil off of my fingertips here so I'm not spoiling it. And then we'll just take our scratch brush and work our way around in this area where we're going to want the solder to flow. Now the solder is actually going to flow up around the bezel. It's going to flow under the bezel and lock it to this back plate that we swaged in here earlier. And it's going to go between that swaged back plate and the ring. So we're going to have three different areas: the bottom of the bezel, the side of the bezel, and then the back plate to the ring. All of those are going to get soldered at the same time. So we've got quite a bit of area to fill. So we're actually going to put quite a bit of solder in this. Roll this around, get a good scratch all the way around the outside here. Catch that bottom edge. I filed it, but it may have picked up some dirt or dust or something like that. And there we go. Everything's scratched up, ready to go. Let's bring out the soldering station. Let's get that prepared. And I'm actually going to use my slider to open this up. Put our bezel together here, and I want to slide. I don't want this soldering joint on the bezel. I can see it on the outside here. I don't want that to be in line with the solder joint of the ring, so I'm going to turn those 180 degrees from each other. And let's bring out our flux bucket here. And I should lock everything in place there. Let's stir up our flux mix here. Get a nice heavy coating of flux, and let's knock out any extra flux. It's pretty heavy. So. fairly thick. And we're just going to lay that right across the tweezers there. And I've got a lot of extra flux in here, so let me take some of that out. That's going to be too much. There we go. Get a little squeeze down. Put it on there. Let's go ahead and level that up. Like so. Steal a little bit of alcohol. And let's select our solder. And for this we're going to be using medium solder. Just lay those pallions right in there. Like I said, we're going to be doing several different joints all at once here, so we've got a lot of area to fill. So we're going to use several large pieces of solder. Thought I had it. There we go. Let's a couple more here. Just one more piece. That's the right size right there. There we go. Okay. Now let's tease those pieces into place. I'm touching both the back plate and the bottom edge. Actually pick that up. Hold on. Let's back that up. It's under solder's under the bezel there. There we go. Tease that over into there. That one over there. So it's got wide edge against the bezel there. I think we're in good shape. Turn my gases on. I use oxygen and propane. I like the propane. It burns nice and hot when you mix it with oxygen, and it doesn't make the soot that acetylene tends to make. And we're going to switch. Let's see, I've got a number 5. Yeah, I think a number 5 should be good enough. Let's do a little soldering. Cheat that a little bit towards the reducing side. Using a reducing flame helps reduce the risk that you're going to create oxides, so you less chance you're going to make fire stain or end up with fire scale. Sure makes cleanup a lot easier. So we'll start from 6-8 inches away. We're just using light heating to try and heat this up slowly so that nothing really pops or jumps. And we're going to have to add a little bit of heat in on the tweezers. They're going to act like a heat sink. So I'm actually directing the flame more towards the bottom here and heating the tweezers up. And once they're saturated with heat, they'll act less like a heat sink. Okay, at this point we can start moving in a little bit. Kind of heating everything. You can see the solder's balled. It's starting to flow now. diffuse that solder over just a little bit. Solder over there in that edge. There it went. Okay. And I see that our solder's pretty much flowed everywhere I wanted it to. Looks like I got a good join. And we want to keep that nice and cool, so I'm just going to grab it right here on the edge. I want to keep it nice and hot before I quench it. And the pickle, that'll anneal it just a little bit. And I'll leave everything out. If I need to do a little more soldering on that, if I pull it out of the pickle I'm not happy with it, I can always do a little more work on it. In the meantime, let's take another look at our shank here. I can see I've got some flashing on these bottom edges left over from the fitting process. So let's turn this over and just kind of clean that flashing up out of there. Okay, that looks... yeah, that looks better. Let's do this side. Okay, and at this point you can see that we've actually taken quite a bit of the metal out for the reliefs here. That is not going to necessarily be a weak area, because if we get a good join all the way around on each side, the bezel will actually lock everything together and it'll actually be fairly strong. One thing we do need to do before we move on is, you remember we soldered these butt ends together here, and we've got just a little bit of a rounded area left there. I can see where there's a little bit of solder bumps on each side, so we'll go ahead and clean those up now. That'll be hard to get to when we get our bezel soldered in there. Let's take a half round file and we'll just kind of blend that area there. There's not much to clean up there. It looks nice and smooth now, but I can run my finger across it and feel that there's still a little bit of a bump there. You can actually feel things that you can't see, so don't be afraid to use your fingers to actually verify what you think your eyes are telling you. There we go. It actually feels nice and smooth now. Profile looks good. Happy with that. Got a pretty good bump here. Let's go ahead and take that out. Okay, happy with that. Now would be the time to actually clean up the inside here if we wanted to do anything there. Let's see, I've got just a little bit of a bump on the bottom there, so I'll kind of roll through that, smooth that just a little bit. Bump on the corner, blend that in. Smooth the side just a little bit. A little bit of a bump there. Okay. Happy with that. Let's smooth this side down a little bit. A little bit of bump on the edge there. Just to catch that. A little blending. Alright, it's smooth now. Now, when I drew this wire, my drawing plate leaves a little bump right in the middle of the half round wire. So if we were worried about that and we wanted to take that out, now would be the time to do that. I actually think it adds a little bit of texture to it. It's a real light line, but it makes it look like there's three different lines there. You've got the two outside edges and then the center line running down the middle. I think it actually adds something to it, so I'm not going to bother trying to take those out. They will polish down quite a bit, and they should be fine. One thing we can do while we're waiting on the pickle is go ahead and take out some of the solder. We wound up with a couple of little bumps here, and there's a bump in the middle there, so we need to go ahead and take care of those. Might as well do it now while we're waiting. And let's see, I'm actually looking for my triangular file. That's yellow, so I want a yellow number 2. And we'll sneak that in here, try and take that bump out. Kind of sheeting that file against one side where that bump is. And this is hazardous because this is a flat file and we're working it against half round wire. So we want to try to limit the amount of flat planes that we create. And that looks pretty good. I can see I've got some cleaning up to do in between the wires here, so we'll go ahead and run this around, kind of blend that all together. I'm just pushing straight down and going right down the middle. The file tells me there's a little bump right there. I can barely see it. I can't really feel it because I can't get my finger down in there, but I can tell by my file that it's catching on something right in that area. So we'll smooth that. Okay, that looks good on that side. Let's move to this side. And we'll do the same thing. Go right down the middle here. I've got a couple of pretty big bumps there. I'm not going to try and take those out with this particular file. They're up a little higher on the half round shape. I think I can get to them with my half round. So that does that for the triangle file. Bring in a little more light for me here. And let's put that half round shape down in there. And just kind of catch those bumps. Blend those a little bit. That one's good. Here's one. Another little one there. Catch that. Okay, and one hiding a little bit deeper down in the crevice there. So we'll turn our half round up on the edge and kind of blend across. You don't want to go straight up and down. You'll cause a kind of a groove. So kind of roll it in there where it needs to be and then roll it out, and it'll tend to make a rounded shape. Alright, pretty happy with that. Okay, stop there. Now, pull that back. You can close the medium solder. I think we're done with that. Let's inspect the bezel and see how our solder went. Alright, let's inspect this. I was looking for good flooding of solder all the way around the outside edge here. We'll start with the outside. And Looks like actually my bezel let go a little bit there. It's separated a little bit here and got just a little bit out of kilter, so let's see if I can persuade that back into shape here without a lot of damage. Take my half round and flat sided here, kind of tease that back over, and that's, yeah, that looks pretty good actually. Wound up with a little bit of a gap on this side, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. By the time we set this and get everything pushed down, it's going to look okay. Alright, and I can see that we got a good solder join all the way around here, so kind of flooding that area with solder definitely worked out. Everything is pretty much locked together at this point. Alright, so now I can put my soldering station away. I'm pretty happy with the way that came out. We're getting closer to finishing this ring. Let's see what we can do about joining these two pieces together now. And one thing I wanted to check is after you solder the bezel to the back plate, you always need to check and make sure you've got a good fit, because if you need to sweat it apart, now is the time to do it. So let's get a little piece of dental floss here. And I always like to loop it over and give it a quick twist together here. And double it up. It seems to work fairly well. And we'll lay that across here. And let's see if this stone actually fits. A little high on this one side. Let's pop that back out. Pop it back out. The easiest way is just to twist that together so it comes together on top of the stone. And keep twisting that around until it turns into a bit of a knot, gives you something to grab onto. There we go. Let's give it a little turn here. There. Yeah, there's a certain point where it just drops right down in there. So that's looking good. I'm happy with that. Okay, now remember we scribed a line earlier on this bezel where we needed to take it down, and this is going to set far enough down in there that if I was to try to do that after I mounted it to the shank, there's a possibility I could bump the top of one of these loops with a file, and I don't want to do that. So now is the time to actually go ahead and file that down. Let's bring our beret file out here. Give it a whack, and we'll start trimming that down. A few strokes, give it a little twist. A few strokes, give it a little twist. And this is 26 gauge sterling silver for the bezel. Let's check that, see how we're looking. And a little bit low on this side, so let's turn it over. We'll actually introduce this edge, give it a few extra strokes here. That should help start to bring that down. Let's check that. And we're about 1 millimeter all the way around now. So now we can go back to actually cutting and twisting. Yeah, it's coming down nice and even now. Maybe a little bit high just on this edge here, so we'll introduce that first. Give it a few extra strokes. And we'll start twisting and stroking, twisting and stroking. This number 2 file takes it down fairly quick, but not so quick like a bastard file would or something like that. But it does clog up the teeth pretty quickly with this sterling silver. So knock the filings out of there every once in a while. Okay, the edge is rolling over a little bit and it's just about to obscure the line. So let's start on this side. I can see the line fairly well on this edge here. Let's introduce that. A few extra strokes. I want this to be nice and even when we're done. Let's take a look at that. And now we're about probably a 1/4 millimeter above the line. Still a little bit proud on this side, so we'll introduce this edge. And I've safed the edges and broken the corners here so I can actually rub my finger across this area here and it doesn't really cut me. So you want to be careful when you get a new file. The first thing you should do is always safe the edges. Just take some sanding paper or a grinding wheel and run it along there and then just break the teeth right here on the very bitter edge. We're almost there. Maybe 1/10 of a millimeter or 2/10 of a millimeter on this side. Introduce that. A little twist to this side, a little twist to that side. Alright. Still just a little bit proud right here. Still just see the bottom of the line. Got just a tiny bit left on this side. That looks pretty good. So at this point, I wound up with an edge rolled over on the outside here. And that's easiest to actually get to right at this moment, so we'll actually go to our Burr file and we'll just take off that bitter edge that we wound up with. Using a number 2 Burr file, there you can see a little edge is just peeling off, so just taking off enough to actually release that rolled edge off of there and cutting it at about a 45-degree angle. And I'm not going to worry about the edge that we rolled on the inside of the bezel. We'll actually catch that after we get this mounted up. And that did it. Okay, and I've got a little bit of a lip here where the bezel separated during soldering. I'm going to go ahead and clean that up a little bit now. Just take it down and get it a little bit closer so it's not so prominent. And there, that blended nicely. And we didn't take too much off. So we've still got plenty of bezel material there. Now, let's look at how we're going to do this. I need to locate place where my ring was actually soldered together. And wouldn't you know it, I can't even see it from the inside. Let's go on the outside here, see if I can see a solder line. I can just make out a shadow right there. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that so it stands out a little bit more. And I want to orient that so that it is not in line with our previous solder joints here. So I'm going to turn that so that it's facing one side over here. And that looks pretty good. Liking the way that looks. And I think I can actually just set that upside down on that. Put some pallions of solder in place and we can go ahead and make that join. So, get ready for solder. We'll go ahead and do a little scratching in that area. Just kind of get any oxides that might have formed or any little bits of swarf that might have got in there that are standing up that might keep us from getting a good fit. Knock those out of the way. And I'm going to need to go on, there's my line, so that's where my solder line is. So we're going to actually be joining on this side and this side. So let's go to the underside here, scratch that area up. Turn that over and scratch this up. And there we go. Yeah, happy with that.